Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. This time I'd like to talk about some of the common stereotypes about obese people. Um, People get overweight by overeating and not exercising. This is simply not true. Common stereotype, though, that obese people just simply can't stop themselves from eating and they don't ever exercise. But it's not about the exercising or the eating, it's about your metabolism and your genetic background. Similarly, people are overweight because they lack willpower. Well, again, it's not about your willpower; it's about your metabolism, and you're not able, with willpower, to control the release of hormones in the middle of the night or during the day, things that affect appetite or suppress appetite, and so forth. Obese people just need to find the right diet. No, being obese is generally a medical condition, and finding the right diet is not the answer. In fact, we know that dieting is not healthy. Um, and so again, it comes back to your own metabolism, and that's a little bit different issue. Being obese poses health risks, but being thin does not. Um, well, certainly there are health risks with being obese. The number one health risk, of course, remains the tendency to develop into diabetes. But being thin definitely has health risks. In fact, being extremely thin or being dieting all the time that makes yourself thin and then back to being obese is extremely unhealthy, and it takes a toll on you and on your organs. And so being extremely skinny, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, is also not the way to go because that is metabolic also. People who diet are healthier and live longer. Well, that's just what I've been saying. This is not true. Um, Diet, particularly if it's a diet that swings, where you go back on it and off of it and on it and off of it, or it doesn't last. If you can make a permanent change, you may live longer and be healthier. But for a lot of people, the idea of a diet is not a one-time thing. It's a activity that gets repeated in different ways over time, and that's really not healthy. Obese workers are less productive. Now, this is simply not true. Today's work is not really physically demanding, and many jobs depend on skills and mental acuity. So this is simply false. Poor persons are more likely to be obese. Um, this is really hard to prove the link. Generally, we don't see a direct link to your uh, income and being obese or not. Um, Being poor does lead to a poor diet, though, but not necessarily to being obese. The implication that being poor means also the stereotype of being poorly educated, and then especially poorly educated about diet and nutrition, therefore in less control of your lives and so forth. This is not true. Part of the reason for this, though, is the food desert. Um, Food desert is an urban area with a high concentration of poor people, uh, where there is also no major grocery store, just fast food options. And so you would think, oh, if you put up a grocery store in these urban areas, it would solve the obesity problem with poor people, and it would be a great business success. And in fact, grocery chains and local, state, and federal government programs have been doing just that, partnering together to bring needed food to these food deserts, which exist in many urban areas across the country. An example, New York State instituted programs aimed at getting more grocery stores and more farmers markets into poor neighborhoods, and they've been successful. Urban neighborhoods are often low in consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables, and obesity rates tend to be high as a result. Um, the federal government has a program called Healthy Food Financing Initiative, and they've handed out over $500 million to grocery stores to get them to locate in places they'd have avoided in the past. Um, but there's been little change really amongst the health and nutrition of poor people in urban centers despite these efforts. People's buying habits, for one thing, don't change. Um, Fast food is certainly easier to get, and it costs less. High protein and fresh foods definitely cost more. And so for a lot of people, even though they might gain the availability of access to regular groceries, they simply can't afford what they really should be eating. Um, there's always the factor that these things take longer to prepare. It means a change of lifestyle many times. Um, and so it takes some education to change the way people buy food, and change the things that they do eat as a consequence. So it is hard work. The work of nonprofit organizations and society in general, to change long established habits and to fix some things that can be fixed. So it is a much more complicated problem to solve than at first glance. Um, when we compare ethnic groups on this issue, one study we do have in LA found the situation is much worse for poor African American neighborhoods. We find that in Latino neighborhoods, for whatever reason, they seem to have more grocery stores than African American neighborhoods, regardless of income level. And so it's hard to know if this is cultural or not, or uh, what really is behind this. We do know that in predominantly white neighborhoods, that we see the fewest number of convenience stores and a greater number of grocery stores. Now, the other side of being obese, of course, is being skinny or extremely skinny. And the author of our textbook doesn't really talk about this, but I wanted to give you this information. It is the other side of the coin. Skinny people have issues and stereotypes, discrimination to deal with, in particular health issues. Um, they must deal with the issue of being told that being skinny is good and fat is always bad. And from what I've read and what some research that's out there on this says is that being told that you're skinny is not taken as a compliment by most people. Yet many Americans seem to think it's okay to tell someone they're skinny or that they're fat even. Um, Controlling weight is affected by a person's level of anxiety. This is true. Along with your metabolism and your genetics, your psychological state has a lot to do with the types of chemicals released into your bloodstream by your glands and hormones and so forth. Um, and so these sorts of things are all interrelated. Um, for women, if we take a look at what happens when women go through childbirth and then afterwards they have what's known as postpartum anxiety. It's a weight swing that happens during this time. And sometimes some women, for whatever reason, because of this postpartum anxiety, have trouble losing the pregnancy weight. It's a source of distress and so forth. This is all tied in with being skinny and being fat. Um, some people who have the opposite of an obese person, maybe a slower metabolism, along with many other factors. I don't want to sound superficial here, but other people have the opposite. They've got high metabolisms and other issues associated with that. And so they have the opposite. They can't get enough to eat. They're feeling hungry all the time. They don't feel full. And so what we really have are medical issues caused by a variety of medical reasons, biological reasons as humans that affect our appetite and so forth. So being skinny is not necessarily related to being either good or bad as far as your health goes. It's individual, of course, but being extremely skinny is just as bad as being extremely heavy. Okay, folks, that's all I wanted to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.